The Krex Empire's maximum security facility hung in the corona of a dying star, its crystalline walls refracting the endless storm of solar radiation into shimmering patterns. Inside, holding cell Delta 9, Dr. Sarah Chen watched her captors through half-lidded eyes, her breathing measured and calm despite the suffocating heat. The Krex guards, with their obsidian carapaces and compound eyes, chittered nervously as they observed her through the energy barrier. The human shows no signs of distress, one guard reported, mandibles clicking in confusion. Thermal readings remained stable despite proximity to the Starsinger's chamber. Sarah suppressed a smile. 3 weeks of captivity had taught her much about the Krex, particularly their assumption that every species was as vulnerable to environmental extremes as they were. They hadn't bothered to check that her research vessel had been specifically modified for solar observation. After 15 years studying stellar phenomena, she was more comfortable in the heat than most. What truly interested her weren't the guards, but the whispers. They had started the moment she was brought aboard, ghostly threads of song that wound through her consciousness, growing stronger with each passing day. The Krex couldn't hear them, of course. They weren't meant to. "Initiate transfer protocol," commanded Overseer Vexkar, his carapace bearing the distinctive purple markings of the scientific elite. "The human will be relocated to Containment Chamber Alpha with the primary specimens." Sarah's pulse quickened, though she maintained her passive expression. Containment Chamber Alpha. That was where the whispers were coming from, where they were keeping what the Krex called Starsingers. The energy barrier dissolved, and 4 guards entered with magnetic restraints. Sarah offered no resistance as they bound her hands and feet. The Krex had already learned that human prisoners were easier to handle when they appeared compliant. They hadn't learned that this made them careless. As they marched her through the twisting corridors of the facility, the whispers grew stronger. They weren't words, exactly, more like impressions, emotions, memories of songs sung between the stars. By the time they reached the massive doors of Containment Chamber Alpha, Sarah's skin was tingling with more than just the facility's heat. "Human specimen ready for integration testing," Vexkar announced to the security system. The doors parted with a sound like singing crystal. The chamber beyond stole Sarah's carefully maintained composure. It was vast, extending up and down for what seemed like kilometers, its walls alive with swirling patterns of light that mimicked the coronal storms outside. But it was what floated in the center that made her breath catch. They were beautiful. Massive, ghostly forms that seemed to be made of living starlight, their bodies constantly shifting between shapes, sometimes resembling terrestrial sea creatures, other times taking forms that defy description. The Starsingers, a species that, according to every official galactic database, had gone extinct millennia ago. "Fascinating, aren't they?" Vexkar's voice held a note of pride. "The last of their kind, preserved here for study. Their energy signatures are unlike anything else in known space, if we can harness it." He left the implications hanging. Sarah barely heard him. The whispers had become a chorus, and now she could almost understand them. There was recognition in their song, an ancient memory of others like her, of Earth, of a time when humans had been something more than what they were now. "Place her in the central observation chamber," Vexkar ordered. "Let's see how long she survives direct exposure to their resonance field." The guards moved to comply, but Sarah was no longer paying attention to them. One of the Starsingers had broken away from the others, approaching the containment field that separated them. As it drew closer, its form resolved into something almost humanoid, a towering figure of light and shadow that reached out with appendages like solar flares. The Krex stepped back, their chittering taking on a nervous tone. They had never seen the specimens behave this way before. The Starsinger pressed against the containment field, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn she saw a face in its swirling patterns, ancient, wise, and surprisingly human. Then it sang, not in whispers this time, but in a clear, pure note that vibrated through Sarah's very atoms. The other Starsingers joined in, their harmonies weaving together into a song that spoke of stars being born and dying, of civilizations rising and falling, of a time when humans had walked between the worlds not as mere visitors, but as guardians of something vast and beautiful. Sarah's restraints fell away, their magnetic locks disrupted by frequencies the Creks had never thought to shield against. She raised her hands, and to everyone's shock, including her own, patterns of light began dancing across her skin, echoing the swirling energy of the Starsingers. Impossible, Vexkar breathed. The human genetic structure is changing, responding to their resonance. How? Because you never asked the right question, Sarah said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal walls sing in sympathy. You wanted to know what the Starsingers were. You should have asked why humanity's genetic code contains patterns that match their song. The containment field separating her from the Starsingers flickered as frequencies it was never designed to handle played across its surface. The Kreks guards raised their weapons, but their targeting systems were already failing, confused by the expanding field of energy around their prisoner. You thought you were studying them, Sarah continued, understanding flooding through her as ancient memories encoded in her very DNA awakened. But they were waiting for one of us to finally hear their song again. The containment field shattered like a soap bubble, and the Starsinger's song rose to a crescendo that shook the facility to its foundations. As alarms blared and the Kreks scrambled for control, Sarah Chen, xenobiologist, prisoner, and apparently something much more, stepped forward to meet her destiny. In the corona of a dying star, an impossible prisoner remembered what humanity used to be, and the galaxy would never be the same. Chaos erupted throughout the facility as emergency protocols activated, but within Containment Chamber Alpha, time seemed to flow differently. The Starsingers encircled Sarah, their luminous forms creating a sphere of shifting light that held the panicked Kreks at bay. In their presence, knowledge flooded through her consciousness, not as words or images, but as pure understanding, carried on waves of stellar harmony. You're not just survivors, she breathed, watching patterns of light dance between her fingers that matched the Starsinger's own. You're guardians, like we were meant to be. The largest of the Starsingers, the one that had first approached her, shifted its form into a spiral that mimicked the galaxy's shape. Within its light, Sarah saw history unfold, not the sterile records taught in universities, but the true story of life among the stars. Long ago, when the galaxy was young, the Starsingers had been its caretakers, maintaining delicate balances of energy that kept the cosmic dance of matter and void in harmony. But they were beings of pure energy, lacking the ability to interact with the physical realm in precise ways. They needed partners, anchors in the material world. They had chosen humanity. Genetic modifications, Sarah murmured, understanding flooding through her, not to change us, but to wake something that was already there. The potential for harmony with the fundamental forces of spacetime itself. Outside their sphere of protection, Overseer Vexkar was coordinating with facility security, bringing more specialized containment equipment online. The Kreks weren't about to let their specimens escape, especially now that they had proof of humanity's hidden connection to them. The human cellular structure continues to alter, she heard one scientist report. Energy patterns matching historical records of impossible, matching the Third Age of Crystal. Sarah almost laughed. The Third Age of Crystal, that mysterious period of galactic history that every species had different, contradictory records about. Now she knew why. Human historians had been trying to piece together fragments of a story they'd forgotten they were part of. The Starsinger's song shifted, becoming urgent. Through their resonance, Sarah saw Kreks warships approaching the facility, carrying weapons designed specifically to capture and contain beings of pure energy. The Empire had been preparing for this possibility. They're not just studying you, she realized. They're trying to weaponize your ability to manipulate fundamental forces, but they don't understand. The harmony can't be forced. The largest Starsinger's form rippled in agreement. Through their connection, Sarah felt its name, not in words, but in the specific frequency of its song. Dawn's first light. It showed her more. Other facilities like this one, scattered across Krek's space. More Starsingers held captive. More attempts to harness their power through technology rather than understanding. Dr. Chen. Vexkar's voice cut through the harmonies. He stood just outside the sphere of light, his carapace reflecting the shifting energies. Surely you understand the significance of this discovery. Think of what humanity could gain by cooperating with the Empire. We could unlock the true potential of your species. Sarah felt the Starsinger's song pulse with something like amusement. The Kreks still didn't understand. This wasn't about unlocking potential. It was about remembering what had always been there. You want to know what humanity's true potential looks like? She asked. The patterns of light flowing across her skin intensified, and she felt Dawn's first light's approval. Let me show you. She reached out, not with her hand, but with that newly awakened sense that let her feel the stellar winds and magnetic fields. The facility's power grid was a complex web of energy, and now she could see how it flowed, how it could be tuned to resonate with the Starsinger's song. The lights flickered. Throughout the facility, equipment began to hum in harmony with frequencies it was never designed to produce. The Krek scientists' instruments went haywire, as energy patterns they had spent years trying to understand and control suddenly broke free of their constraints. Stop this immediately, Vexkar commanded, but there was fear in his voice now. The containment fields are failing throughout the facility. They were never meant to be contained, Sarah replied, her voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal walls vibrate. Neither were we. The Starsinger's song reached a crescendo, and Sarah added her own voice to their chorus. Throughout the facility, other voices joined in, more Starsingers, responding to the call of freedom. The Kreks had thought they were studying individual specimens, but they had never understood that the Starsingers were all connected, all part of the same cosmic symphony. Warning klaxons blared as containment fields failed one by one. The Kreks guards fired their weapons, but the energy bolts were caught in the swirling patterns of light and transformed into pure harmony. Sarah felt power flowing through her, not as something foreign, but as a remembrance of what humanity had once been, what they could be again. The warships are entering firing range, a guard reported frantically. Energy weapons charging. But Sarah wasn't worried. Through her connection with Dawn's first light, she could feel the solar storms raging around the facility. The Kreks had built their prison in a star's corona thinking it would help contain their prisoners. They never considered that both humans and Starsingers had evolved in the hearts of stars themselves. Time to remember what it means to dance among the stars, she said, and reached out to touch the heart of the dying sun itself. The facility's crystal walls began to sing, and the true power of the ancient partnership between humanity and the Starsingers was about to be demonstrated once again. Last edited 1 minute ago. The corona of the dying star erupted in waves of plasma that dwarfed planetary systems. Inside the facility, Sarah Chen stood at the center of a constellation of light. Her consciousness expanded far beyond normal human limits. Through her connection with Dawn's first light and the other Starsingers, she could feel the raw power of the stellar storm responding to their combined will. The approaching Kreks warships faltered as their sensors overloaded. Energy patterns they had spent centuries trying to understand were now moving with purpose, with harmony, with a cooperation their studies had never predicted was possible. All ships, maintain position. The command echoed through the facility's communication systems. Energy signatures exceeding containment parameters. Preparing orbital strike protocols. Through the crystalline walls, Sarah watched the massive ships adjust their formation. The Kreks weren't going to let their specimens escape, even if it meant destroying the facility. But they had forgotten one crucial detail about stars. They were more than just nuclear furnaces. They were the original dancers in the cosmic ballet. They're going to fire, she communicated to Dawn's first light, not in words, but in resonant frequencies that rippled through space itself. The Starsinger's response came as a shift in the harmony surrounding them. showing her possibilities she had never imagined. Deeper in the facility, alarms blared as more containment fields failed. The Kreks had captured dozens of Starsingers over the years, keeping them separated to prevent exactly what was happening now. A synchronized chorus that could tap into fundamental forces of the universe. Dr. Chen, Overseer Vexkar's voice carried desperate authority. The facility's structural integrity is failing. If you continue this, you'll kill everyone aboard, including yourself. Sarah turned to face him, and the Krek scientist involuntarily stepped back. Her eyes now held the same swirling patterns as the Starsingers, and her voice resonated with harmonics that made the very atoms of the air vibrate in sympathy. "You still don't understand what you're seeing," she said. "This isn't about destruction. It's about remembrance, about balance." Through her expanded awareness, she could feel the truth of her words. The Starsingers hadn't chosen humanity as partners because of any special physical traits. They had recognized something else, an innate ability to understand harmony, to find patterns in chaos, to bridge the gap between energy and matter. The facility shuddered as the first warning shots from the Krek's fleet pierced the corona. But Sarah wasn't afraid. Working with Dawn's first light and the others, she began to sing. Not with her physical voice, but with that part of her that had finally awakened to its true nature. The result was beyond anything the Kreks had imagined possible. The solar plasma around the facility began to move in precise patterns, forming structures that shouldn't have been stable. Energy fields that their sensors classified as random chaos organized themselves into complex geometries. Impossible readings from all sectors. A technician reported. "The specimens, they're not just manipulating energy. They're writing it." Sarah finished for him. "Like your people write with light and crystal, we once wrote with the fundamental forces themselves. The Starsingers taught us how, before we forgot." Through their shared consciousness, Dawn's first light showed her more. Vast networks of energy that had once connected solar systems, maintained by the partnership between humans and Starsingers. The geometry of space itself could be adjusted, fine-tuned like a musical instrument to allow for harmonious travel and communication across impossible distances. The Krek's fleet opened fire in earnest now, their energy weapons carving lines of destruction through the corona. But Sarah and the Starsingers were ready. The solar plasma moved in response to their song, absorbing and redirecting the attacks in a dance that transformed destructive force into pure harmony. Station structural integrity at 30%. Someone shouted, "We need to evacuate." But evacuation wasn't what Sarah had in mind. Working with the Starsingers, she extended her awareness to the facility itself. The crystalline materials the Kreks had used in its construction weren't so different from the structures humans and Starsingers had once built together. With the right resonance, the walls began to change. What had been mere containment became conduit, channel, instrument. The entire facility transformed into a tuning fork for cosmic frequencies that hadn't been heard in millennia. By the first light, Vexkar whispered, scientific curiosity overtaking his fear as he watched the transformation. The legends of the Crystal Age. They weren't about technology at all, were they? No, Sarah confirmed, feeling the harmony build toward a crescendo. They were about partnership, about understanding that the universe itself is a song, and all of us, human, Starsinger, even Kreks, are part of its chorus. The facility's transformation completed just as the Kreks fleet moved into position for a final devastating barrage. But they were too late. The chamber around them had become something else. A beacon, a bridge, a reminder of what was possible when the barriers between matter and energy, between consciousness and cosmos, were finally understood. Sarah raised her hands, no longer seeing them as mere flesh, but as conductors of a greater symphony. Dawn's first light and the other Starsingers moved in perfect synchronization with her. Throughout the facility, throughout the corona, throughout space itself, their song began to build. The time had come to remind the galaxy why humans and Starsingers had once been both respected and feared, not for their destructive potential, but for their ability to reshape reality itself through the power of ultimate harmony. The transformed facility hung in the star's corona like a crystalline lotus, its petals refracting stellar energies in patterns that defied conventional physics. Inside, Sarah Chen and the Starsingers had created something that hadn't existed in the galaxy for thousands of years, a harmony node, a focal point where the boundaries between energy and matter became fluid. Through their shared consciousness, Dawn's first light showed her the truth of what they had created. These nodes had once formed a vast network across the galaxy, maintained by the partnership between humans and Starsingers. They were more than just transportation hubs or power sources. They were intersection points where the very fabric of space-time could be tuned like strings on a cosmic instrument. The Krex fleet hung motionless, their weapons powered but holding fire as their sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Energy patterns that had defied their best scientists for centuries were now moving with purpose, weaving together in ways that their instruments couldn't even properly record. Priority alert from Central Command. A communication cut through the facility's systems. Unknown energy configuration detected. Historical match found in restricted archives. Protocol Omega is now in effect. Sarah felt Dawn's first light's response, a ripple of something like grim amusement. The Starsingers had known this moment would come. The Krex Empire hadn't just stumbled upon them by accident. They had been searching, following fragments of ancient knowledge, trying to understand powers that had shaped the galaxy long before their civilization achieved spaceflight. Multiple vessels entering the system, reported a frantic technician. Massive energy signatures. It's the Imperial Armada. Through the facility's transformed walls, Sarah watched as space itself seemed to tear open. Hundreds of Krex warships emerged, their crystalline hulls carved with runes of power that pulsed with captured stellar energy. This wasn't just a containment force. This was an army designed specifically to handle threats on a cosmic scale. Dr. Chen. A new voice filled the chamber, accompanied by a holographic projection of a Krex, unlike any Sarah had seen. Its carapace was inscribed with living light, and its compound eyes reflected patterns that mimicked the Starsinger's own. I am High Archon Zixtal. You have activated protocols that have remained dormant for millennia. Surrender now, and your knowledge will be preserved. But Sarah wasn't listening to the Archon's words. Through her connection with the Starsingers, she was seeing the truth behind them. The rooms on the Krex ships, the patterns in the Archon's carapace, they were crude copies of the harmony that humans and Starsingers had once wielded together. The Krex hadn't just been studying their prisoners. They had been trying to replicate an entire civilization's worth of forgotten knowledge. You've been looking in the wrong place, Sarah said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the Archon's hologram flicker. You can't force the harmony. You can't capture it or control it. It has to be understood. Curious words from a species that forgot its own legacy, Zixtal responded. Humanity abandoned its role as custodians of the cosmic harmony. We merely seek to fill that void. Dawn's first light's form pulsed with sudden intensity, and Sarah felt a surge of memories that weren't her own. She saw the truth of humanity's separation from the Starsingers, not an abandonment, but a protective measure. A choice made when ancient enemies had threatened to corrupt the harmony itself. We didn't abandon anything, Sarah said, understanding flowing through her. We hid the knowledge within ourselves, encoded it into our very DNA, waiting for the right moment to remember. The Starsingers didn't choose us again by accident. They were waiting for us to wake up. The Archon's compound eyes flickered with complex emotions. Then you understand why we cannot allow this reunion to proceed. The power you represent, it would destabilize everything we have built. No, Sarah corrected, feeling the harmony build around her. It would restore what was meant to be. The Imperial Armada began to move, their formation creating geometric patterns that Sarah now recognized as attempts to manipulate fundamental forces. But they were copying without understanding, using technology to brute force effects that should have come from harmony. Working with the Starsingers, Sarah began to sing. The facility's crystalline structure amplified their chorus, sending ripples through space-time itself. The crude runes on the Krex ships flickered as they encountered frequencies they were never truly meant to channel. All ships, commence fire. Zix Tall commanded. Full containment protocols. Energy beams lanced through space, their power enough to shatter planets. But where they struck the facility's transformed structure, they found something unprecedented. The attacks weren't being blocked or absorbed, they were being rewritten, their discordant energies transformed into pure harmony. Through her expanded awareness, Sarah could feel similar transformations happening throughout the galaxy. Their song was awakening something that had laid dormant for millennia. The remnants of the old harmony network, waiting in the spaces between stars for humanity to remember its purpose. "You don't have to fight us," Sarah told the Archon, even as the facility began to pulse with building power. The harmony was never meant to be hoarded or controlled. It was meant to be shared, to be taught. That's why the Starsingers chose us in the first place. Not because we were powerful, but because we could learn to teach others. For a moment, she saw uncertainty flicker across the Archon's features. But then the hologram steadied, compound eyes hardening with resolve. The time for teaching is past. The galaxy requires order, not harmony. "You're wrong," Sarah said simply, and felt Dawn's first light's agreement resonate through her being. "And we're about to show you why." The facility's transformation completed, the harmony node reached full power, and Sarah Chen, scientist, explorer, and awakened guardian of cosmic forces, prepared to demonstrate exactly why humanity's partnership with the Starsingers had once been legendary. The true power of harmony was about to be unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The space around the dying star became a battlefield unlike any the galaxy had seen in millennia. The Imperial Armada's weapons fired in precisely calculated patterns, their energy beams weaving networks of destructive force that should have been inescapable. But the transformed facility, now a fully awakened harmony node, moved with its own rhythm, not dodging the attacks, but incorporating them into a greater symphony. Sarah Chen stood at the heart of it all. Her consciousness expanded far beyond normal human limits. Through her connection with Dawn's first light and the other Starsingers, she wasn't just seeing the battle, she was feeling it as movements in an eternal cosmic dance. "Fascinating," High Archon Zixtal's hologram observed, compound eyes tracking patterns that defied Imperial science. "You've achieved in moments what our researchers couldn't accomplish in centuries. Perhaps we should thank you for demonstrating the full potential of these powers." But Sarah could see what the Archon couldn't. The runes of stolen knowledge that covered the Imperial ships were beginning to resonate with frequencies they were never meant to channel. The Krex had built their weapons using fragments of ancient harmony, not understanding that true power came from cooperation, not control. "Last warning," Sarah said, her voice carrying harmonics that made space itself shiver. "Stand down your fleet. Let us show you a better way." "There is no better way than order," Zixtal declared. "All ships, initiate Protocol Omega. Full spectrum assault." The Imperial Armada's formation shifted, hundreds of ships moving in geometric patterns that attempted to mirror the ancient principles of harmony. Energy began to build between them, creating a web of force that would have been enough to tear a planet apart. But Sarah wasn't afraid. Working with Dawn's first light, she reached deeper into the awakened potential that had always existed within human DNA. The Starsinger's song merged with her own consciousness, and suddenly she could see the universe as they did, not as separate objects and energies, but as one vast, interconnected symphony. "You want to see what true harmony looks like?" she asked, and began to sing. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The facility's crystalline structure amplified her voice, not just in sound but in fundamental frequencies that rippled through space-time itself. The Starsingers joined her, their combined chorus reaching out to touch the crude harmonics the Krex were trying to control. And then something extraordinary happened. The rooms on the Imperial ships began to change. The The stolen knowledge encoded in them responded to the true harmony, transforming from tools of destruction into something they were always meant to be, conduits for understanding. What are you doing? Zixtal demanded, watching as the carefully constructed weapons of the Imperial Armada began to resonate with frequencies they were never designed to handle. We're not doing anything to you, Sarah explained, feeling Dawn's first light's approval radiate through their connection. We're reminding your ships of what they were meant to be. This knowledge you've been trying to control. It was never meant to be a weapon. It was meant to be a bridge. Through the facility's transformed walls, Sarah could see the effect spreading through the Imperial fleet. Ships that had been poised to attack were now surrounded by patterns of light that mirrored the Starsinger's own. The crude harmonics the Kreks had captured were awakening to their true purpose, reaching out to join a greater symphony. Impossible, the Archon whispered. Our containment protocols can't contain understanding. Sarah finished. You've spent centuries trying to capture and control these forces, but the Starsingers chose humanity as partners for a reason. We don't just use the harmony, we help it grow. We teach others to understand it. The evidence was impossible to deny. Throughout the Imperial fleet, crews were witnessing something unprecedented. The very forces they had tried to harness as weapons were now singing with their true voice, showing them visions of what the galaxy had once been, and could be again. Your empire doesn't have to end, Sarah continued, feeling the truth of her words in the resonance that connected all things. It can transform. The harmony network we once maintained, it wasn't just for humans and Starsingers. It was meant to connect all species, all civilizations, to help us understand that we're all part of the same cosmic dance. For a long moment, the Archon was silent, compound eyes reflecting the changing patterns that surrounded his fleet. When he spoke again, his voice held a different tone, not the certainty of an Imperial commander, but the wonder of a scientist encountering something truly new. The legends, he said slowly. They spoke of a time when the stars themselves sang with one voice, when distance meant nothing because all things were connected through harmony. Sarah finished. Not control, not domination. Understanding. The last of the Imperial weapons powered down, and in their place, something new began to take shape. The knowledge the Kreks had gathered over centuries was finally serving its true purpose, not to capture the harmony, but to join it. Throughout the fleet, the stolen fragments of ancient wisdom were awakening, reaching out to reconnect with the network that had once spanned galaxies. Dawn's first light moved closer to Sarah, its form shifting to mirror the patterns that now danced between the stars. Through their connection, she felt its satisfaction. This was why the Starsingers had waited so long, had allowed themselves to be captured. They had known that humanity would remember its purpose not just to use the harmony, but to share it. What happens now? Zixtal asked, and for the first time, there was genuine curiosity in his voice. Sarah smiled, feeling the cosmic symphony build around them. Now we start teaching again. All of us. Together. The facility that had been a prison became a beacon, its light reaching out across space and time to awaken other nodes in the ancient network. Throughout the galaxy, other humans would begin to remember, other Starsingers would emerge from hiding, and species like the Kreks would learn that true power came not from control, but from harmony. A new age was beginning, not of crystal, not of empire, but of understanding. And as Sarah Chen stood among the Starsingers, watching the universe remember how to sing, she knew that humanity had finally come home to its true purpose among the stars. The symphony of freedom had only just begun.